what film's known for, obviously, apart from the kind of technical flashiness, is known for this kind of the subtext behind it. And it's not like Rebecca and not like Strange on Train, which, could be argued for either way. I would say this is very much, it's not even subtext really, it's there, it's in the text.
You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast where we talk about topics in film theory, history, criticism, etc. Because we like doing it. It's the time of year for it. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who wears AirPods so as not to get implicated into murder plots on a train.
I'm Sam, and I'm the one who hosts dinner parties just to have an excuse to have a go at some murdering.
Have a go at some murdering. Beautiful way to phrase it. I'm Kieran. I'm the one who dreamt he went to Manderley again.
Nice. Okay, yeah, so we were doing last week's episode about, Code-era Hollywood, queer-coded films. We were like, okay, there's 3 Hitchcock ones that fall under this, at minimum. Yeah. Psycho's a bit more explicit with, like, the trans or transvestite or whatever you want to call it aspects. So we left that one out, and we're discussing queer-coded, code-era Alfred Hitchcock films specifically. And he's good because, yeah, he's got these films, but also sort of his mode of suspense filmmaking sort of inherently fits the idea of queer coding. There's all the secrets and the cover up and suspense, the internal psychological warfare in characters. So even if there wasn't any kind of intent, which it depends on the film, there's very ripe ground for this kind of interpretation.
Yeah, and his films, especially, they tend to deal quite often with individuals that society of the time would consider deviant or aberrant, to the norm, basically. So, they tended to be villains in his world, but occasionally they were kind of the protagonists of his films as well. So. It's definitely fertile ground, I think, to get into looking through some of the more prominent examples from his filmography.
Yeah, and when I think of Hitchcock, and I come at I've seen maybe 10, let's say, of his tons of movies, maybe a few more, but. Just that is watching a lot in hindsight. But, most of my idea of him comes from just the more general culture idea. And I think of the way that he used editing. And so much of the way that he tells through film is through Eisenstein-style montage, where you see someone make a face, you see an object, and just all of the implication and exposition is done. And that is semiotic reading that, coding and closeting, that kind of stuff gets into.
Yeah, because he is one of the great show don't tell filmmakers. That's one of his favourite techniques. It's to clue the audience into something that's going to happen. You don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but it's happening imminently. But he'll just keep stringing that out and keep kind of just dialing up the tension, and making you wait, for the other shoe to drop. It's one of his favourite kind of playful things to do with his audience.
Yeah, and it's a shame Kieran's dropped out right now, but I'm going to talk a little bit about his background because I was curious, what did Alfred Hitchcock think? Where is he coming from as a person? Yeah. So pretty much all I knew was Hitchcock had like fascination with specific women, and he was abusive. It's been alleged from, who was that lady in The Birds? Yes, thank you, Tippi Hedren, that he, assaulted her sexually and verbally was abusive. And, look, I don't know the hard and fast facts, so I'm just going to leave it at the more vague. He's not a great guy when it comes to women. But he is obviously not a closeted artist trying to express through his art. And he wasn't coming at anything from a place of malice necessarily, although his characters in these stories are rather deviant. He was not particularly political. Like, he was anti-fascist in the 40s during World War II, and he was like just kind of a vague liberal, apolitical kind of figure. He was Catholic in his upbringing. I couldn't find anything that said he was a serious Catholic into adulthood. And he also was, you know, pretty obviously a straight person. His wife, Alma Reville, she was an editor, script supervisor, screenwriter, and a major collaborator with him. And I think the final important bit was he was kind of socially reserved, you know. I don't want to say conservative, but just if you looked at his life, it's very traditional with the wife and the just being kind of a normal quote unquote guy. He wasn't an activist. He wasn't outspoken about queer issues or anything like that.
No, and it wasn't even one of these kind of Hollywood directors in terms of, like, you know, social circles. You know, it was well regarded as like a filmmaker, and, you know, a lot of actors and actresses and queuing up to, you know, work with him, and a lot of them, you know, worked with him multiple times. You know, and you developed these strong kind of creative collaborations with him. But in terms of it wasn't like one of these people who had like a really flashy kind of. His home life was definitely his home life, and then his work life was his work life. You know, it kept quite separate. I think, you know, I don't think he was considered like a you know, someone who'd be turning up at all these wild parties, you know, or, you know, kind of be part of like that kind of Hollywood kind of social circles. Really, he definitely kept those kind of separate. Maybe that's because he was a bit older by the time he got to Hollywood. You know, he was getting into his 60s. You know, so, you know, wasn't really, you know, hanging around all the you know, the young talent or anything like that, but yeah, he was I think he was generally had quite a normal kind of home life, you know, with his wife and his daughter. Essentially, left all the wild stuff, you know, to actually put into his films.
Yeah, and in his films, like, you know, the straight aspects, you know, quote unquote, which would have just been the aspects, I think, of his film. But, you know, the marriages between characters in these films we watch, even if they're heterosexual, like, there are issues with them. It's not clean, you know, this thing is good, you know, there's no plain representation of traditional heterosexual marriage. You know, those things are infected, and we could talk about that more later.
I mean, I think you'd argue like that old adage about, you know, someone asks him, you know, why doesn't anyone in your film just call the police, and he says, because it would be boring. You know, it's the same aspect of, you know, in terms of like how family dynamics and kind of relationships are kind of presented on his films. You know, it's kind of that they have these kind of they hit these roadblocks. They're kind of dysfunctional. They have these kind of, you know, arguments, kind of big relationship breakdowns, and all this drama going on because it makes the films more interesting. You know, it's always comes down to, right, I like this script. Okay, how can I make it? How can I make it more me? You know, add more kind of you know, pizzazz, you know, to the character dynamics, and you know, make it more dramatic and cinematic. You know, that's always what it came down to with Hitchcock, really.
Yeah. Hitchcock was never one for kind of straight reality. I mean, it's why he is my favourite director, because his entire thing was, what will make the best entertainment? And that's it. It's like, is it going to happen normally in real life? No. Yeah. But you know what? It's going to be more of a fun time at the cinema. And he was, as much as he was an artiste or an auteur, as many people had to argue the case for, at one time or another before, because Hitchcock wasn't immediately seen as one of the greats. People had to make the case. But his entire thing was, look, people have paid money to come see me at the cinema. I want to give them their money's worth, rather than give them some lecture on the deep meaning of philosophical things. It's like, if I can get that in, that's great. But beforehand, let's entertain the audience.
Yeah. I think David Grevin, he's a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder. he talked about Hitchcock's films just generally being interrogations of a culture of heterosexual presumption. And, he said that in an essay, this is from an essay on Rope, he says Hitchcock is not only staging queer deviance, he is also making straight normality look fragile, theatrical, coercive. So as we're moving into these films, that, like we've said, it's just kind of an inherent part of his filmmaking. And here's a fun thing. We could bring Russo back in from Celluloid Closet, because he directly talks about Rope and Strangers on a Train. I think he mentions Rebecca, but he doesn't discuss it at length.
So the one that kind of started off as going in this direction, Rebecca, based on the novel by Daphne du Maurier, directed by some weird guy that we're definitely not having a focus on this episode. And I still love this film for my favourite Oscars fact of all time, which I've said before, the only film to win Best Picture but not win in the acting, writing or directing category. And every year the Oscars come around and I go, oh, we're going to have it again. Nope, still holds the record, and we'll just keep going on and on. And I kind of want somebody to hit it again, to bring it up, and then kind of hope that nobody does. Because and it's why people occasionally, I think even later on in life, people mistakenly thought Hitchcock had won an Oscar, and he's like, never won an Oscar for directing. Rebecca got it. And then, strangely enough, the year after would be his only acting win with Joan Fontaine and Suspicion for a Hitchcock movie. So, Rebecca, based on the book by Daphne du Maurier, kind of going off from the fact, the second of his three Daphne du Maurier adaptations, two obviously very much got on. The third would be the Birds, and the first would be Jamaica Inn. And kind of after that, he was still on the sort of rumblings around it, and du Maurier was writing Rebecca, and I think he got hold of kind of bits from it and wanted to do it himself, but didn't manage to get the rights in time. So he saw it before the book came out, so he knew roughly what it would be. It came out, and the rights went to Selznick, and then Selznick, as a producer, got Hitchcock on board anyway. So that kind of started off. I mean, Rebecca is now a classic, the book and the film. One of the kind of the great kind of works of kind of, I want to say Gothic, but now it's almost like modern Gothic. I think once you go into the 1900s, you get into the modern Gothic, because the initial kind of phase is over. And for those who aren't aware, it is about sort of Joan Fontaine's character, who isn't named, and that's kind of part of the appeal of Rebecca, is that it's not named. It's just the new Miss de Winter, who's kind of a sort of lady's companion at the start, and catches the eye of Maxime de Winter, who's this kind of very charming aristocrat in this film, played by Laurents Olivier, who is fairly unknown at the time. They wanted other people before they went to Olivier. I mean, 10, 15 years later, if you'd have gone to Olivier, it was like, oh my God, we're going to have to pay through the nose. This is one of the films that kind of makes him, and he does a lot of his work on stage, obviously, but this is kind of one of his first major breakout film roles. And they end up getting kind of very quickly married, and she ends up going back with him to Manderley to be a kind of the lady of the manor sort of thing on the Cornish coast. She's an American, obviously, so there's a disconnect there. And in Manderley, we kind of get introduced to two characters, really. We get introduced to Mrs. Danvers, who's the housekeeper, brilliantly played here, and also Rebecca. Now, Rebecca was the original Mrs. de Winter, who has died before the whole thing even starts, and yet literally she is, well, I think people have described it, and I described it as, this is the best ghost story without a ghost in it, because she might as well be a ghost. That's the entire thing. Her presence is the entire film. Everything is soaked in with Rebecca, and it essentially drives pretty much everyone mad. as it goes on, and there may or may not be secrets hiding underneath, and that's where you get the real Hitchcock stuff going out. Because aside from that, Hitchcock didn't really go gothic. That wasn't his style. Kind of, you get bits of it in places like Psycho, where you have kind of the modern American gothic in terms of the house, but in terms of proper kind of like almost haunted house gothic, wasn't his thing. Noir, you obviously have similar crossover, but you didn't. Hitchcock very rarely went full horror, and I think this is probably one of the earliest kind of examples, until you get to Psycho and the Birds, of him proper kind of horror going.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I can see how it connects to The Uninvited. I was watching this going, oh, is this going to turn into a ghost movie? And it just didn't do that. And it's paced very differently from The Uninvited, too. And for me personally, I'd rather watch The Uninvited. Not just because it's a bit more like genre style, but like, I don't know. The pacing of this one really drags it for me, but
I mean, I get really swept up by it personally, with the atmosphere and the kind of moodiness of the whole thing. I think I watched this for the first time during lockdown for some reason. It kind of fit that atmosphere of being trapped inside, and just with endless hours, to waste, trapped in your own kind of little prisons. It always makes me laugh in this though that I know the casting of the second Mr. Winter wasn't straightforward, and obviously ends up with Joan Fontaine. It always makes me laugh though whenever a film tries to make out like Joan Fontaine isn't one of the most beautiful women who's ever lived. There's like multiple lines about where I've been a bit plain, or not living up to Rebecca, or not having the poise.
Joan Fontaine, what are you on about?
I know exactly.
It's a bit like the Barbie line.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is an interesting one for Hitchcock. I think I wouldn't kind of have Stan as like one of kind of I'd immediately think of as like in his wheelhouse. Kind of part of his kind of canon, but it's very much up there for me. I think it's probably top 5 for me. Definitely top 10, maybe top 5. I'll head towards top 5.
For me, it makes the that one in Australia we watched make more sense. That he would make that movie.
Under Capricorn, yeah.
Yeah, Under Capricorn.
Although Under Capricorn was using a lot of stuff that he did coming off Rope. But I forgot Under Capricorn was a thing. It's not great. If you're wondering, so 2 years ago, I ranked all of Hitchcock movies for the Film Magazine. Still up there, go read it. I put Rebecca in 7th. So it did make my top 10. Not quite the top 5, but it did make the top 10, because you can't argue with it, It is beautifully shot, beautifully acted. And yeah, they went through a load of people to try and get it. Now, where it fits into the queerness aspect of it is essentially in the character of Mrs. Danvers. That's where the focus is. And in the kind of lesbianism of it, and her sort of longing for Rebecca in a kind of who was the matriarchal figure. And they actually make Mrs. Danvers younger in the film adaptation than the book. She's a little bit older in the novel. But still, beautiful performance here as Mrs. Danvers. Thingy Anderson. Can't remember Judith Anderson. We do get nominated for the Oscar for it.
It's funny. I always I always forget that she didn't actually win. I always seem to think this is an Oscar-winning performance. It just seems like, well, obviously it was, but no, apparently not.
Yeah, and I wonder if this was her kind of the creepy sort of caretaker lady sort of figure, almost an inspiration for what they're called in The Haunting of Hill House, where you have the woman that I can't remember the name and it's annoying me now. going around going, nobody comes here after dark, and then no one can hear you in the night, and the dark just floats away, sort of thing. I'm wondering if there's kind of an inspiration just in sort of the weirdness and creepiness of it. But in the book, it is far more heavily implied of at least an infatuation from Mrs. Danvers to Rebecca. If not, I can't remember if there was any hints about actually something going on between them. But knowing du Maurier probably thought about it somewhere, even if it wasn't explicitly put in. And when it got to the film adaptation, essentially a lot of the stuff was, please downplay it, because obviously the Hays Code, and this is why we're kind of on it. So I think, again, there are ways, because it's downplayed so much, you could read this completely straight and just go, she was looked up to it a lot. As soon as you know, dampen down for the Hays Code, you go, okay, yeah, it's completely there. And it makes it interesting. And again, the reason why this came up is somebody else's comment that, the Hays Code at least allowed kind of these characters to actually have character. And it allows Mrs. Danvers here to essentially completely run away with the entire film. Yeah. Like, you've got Laurence Olivier and Joan Fontaine in this, and Judith Anderson just steals every single second. It's quite incredible. To have this kind of thing where she's running around and going, Mrs. De Winter always did things like this, Rebecca always did things like that, going through all her clothes. I think in the book she kind of handles the clothes in a particular way that gives a kind of far more sensual aspect to it.
I just love the little details in her performance, like Alfred Hitchcock, like advising her, about Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter, it's like she was told never to blink if she could help it, because they wanted it to be more kind of otherworldly and kind of disconcerting. In fact, you don't really see her appear in rooms if she's just suddenly there. She appears like you do see her move. She appears to glide around. It's like she doesn't have office. She doesn't seem to move like a person. She's more kind of spectral than that.
Yeah, in many ways, she is almost becoming sort of Rebecca's avatar on Earth in a way. That you have everyone else that remembers a bit about Rebecca, but Mrs. Danvers is really sort of, the ghost that Rebecca wants to be in a way, and it's just you can't say enough about it really from that point of view. That she's just so good in every single second, which is not to take away from Laurence Olivier or Joan Fontaine, who do everything absolutely beautifully as well. One of the other things with the Hays Code as well is it's not just the downplay of sexuality. There's the downplay of kind of violence, and there's also the downplay of moral and ethical issues. So in the book, essentially, spoiler, Maxim de Winter actually does physically kind of go out to murder Rebecca to try and get away from her kind of domineering influence. This was explicitly changed because I think the comment was something like, the book is essentially the story of a man who gets off scot-free for murder. And it's just kind of your sympathies lie with him because the kind of dominating influence that Rebecca had, that you can kind of get away with that. They were like, no, you have to change this. So that bit got changed. The downplaying of the lesbianism got changed as well. There's a couple of bits that are like, nah, we'll keep this and we'll see if it flies. But that's why kind of the endings were very slightly changed in order to be in keeping with the Hays Code. So I think when we think of the Hays Code, we think of it explicitly for kind of sexuality. But there were other moral issues as well that get changed as a result of this.
Even stuff like you can't show a priest in a bad light, or police officers, authority figures. Like it was very strict about what films could and couldn't show. And like we mentioned last week, it was self-regulation by Hollywood. So there's a board of people approving this. It's not U.S. government censorship. That's what they were scared of at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think we also need to give heads up to the cinematography as well. I can't remember who the cinematographer was, but again, one of the things with these kind of proper old Gothic, especially the black and white cinematography by George Barnes, is that it has to look right. And I mean, again, we said that The Uninvited later would did it win for cinematography or just get a norm? I can't remember. But this thing has to look right. If it doesn't, the entire thing falls down because, strangely, unusually for Hitchcock, most of it has to rely on the atmosphere. You know, yes, there's plot as well, but a lot of kind of Hitchcock's kind of thrillers, which he's now becoming known for. And again, he didn't always do thrillers. He did kind of, dramas and musicals as well. Waltzes in Vienna is not good, just saying. But he's now becoming known for his thrillers. He's done 39 Steps. He's done Man Who Knew Too Much. He's done Jamaica Inn. A lot of that you can get away with by kind of, if something's going a little bit down, you can bring in another event in order to bring it along. And yes, the cinematography is one thing, but you can kind of sweep people along enough that bit can kind of get downplayed. Atmosphere is not as kind of heavy in something like 39 Steps or Man Who Knew Too Much. This film, you are trapped at Manderley for most of the film, and it has to feel it. And the look of the film is one of the ways this has to be done. And Saunders does such a great shot. There's just beautiful shots, like just moving from place to place in these big kind of wide halls sorts of things. And you get your old noir shadows. Bearing in mind this is 1940, so Hitchcock is essentially run to escape sort of the war that's going on in Britain. I'm not sure if this is his first or second big American picture as well. So he's going to be working with pretty much an entirely new crew, working in a country he's not familiar with kind of systems he's not familiar with, and to get it looking how it does, you got, even if you're not kind of enamored with the plot as much as you were, Jacob, and the kind of the pacing and everything, because it has to rely on that atmosphere, it still looks gorgeous. It still feels good. It's still thick and heavy at times as well. Maybe it is. It does feel
like it's going to become a Gothic ghost film for sure. Like it's beautifully shot.
Yeah. And again, that's the thing. If you think of it, it's the best ghost story without a ghost in it. Suddenly, like, the whole thing kind of changes. And there's a few things that would change as well, like I think the Rebecca on the bed right at the end, the final shot. I think that was like a request to add in for some reason or other. There's a few differences.
Yeah. I think Thalberg requested that the smoke above the flaming house would fall into a big R, and Hitchcock was just like, "No, that's just silly. If we could technically achieve that, I'm not doing that. I'll give you the R on the pillowcase instead, and a push in through the flames." Which he
15.
He was right. There's a much better idea.
Yeah. 15 years later, Jacques Tourneur wasn't able to use the same thing to get away using a demon in Night of the Demon. We will do Night of the Demon at some point, just to discuss that thing. Go back to Elmar James, but I really do like this movie. This is like maybe the third time I've seen it. It's not one of my absolute favourites. If I'm going for Hitchcock, I'm not going to go for Rebecca. But I can't fault it either. Like, especially on like a technical level, it's so well done on an absolute pure technical like standpoint that it's just it's really good. If people are like, it's 1940, you don't care, it's not one of Hitchcock's like out and out thrillers. Why would I bother? Nah, this is he's done his other stuff, and I think this is where, along kind of with his thrillers, this is where he proves he can do other things. Yeah,
absolutely.
And it really works like that. And I think because of Hitchcock, it kind of gets overlooked. Because you go Hitchcock, okay, we're going to go Psycho, we're going to go Rear Window, we're going to go Vertigo. Even kind of thrillers, you're going to go Man Who Knew Too Much, both versions, 39 Steps, Rope to a certain extent, Strangers on a Train. This one kind of falls by the wayside. There's a few around, these times that you kind of forget about. But again, this is kind of this and Psycho are the nearest he got to winning the directing Oscar.
Yeah.
Tells you everything. Really.
Well, I kind of had the funny thought to myself, I bet if they made a modern remake of this, they would give her a name, some other name that starts for an R just for the bed bit. But no, I Googled and I found out there is a adaptation from 2020 starring Lily James and Armie Hammer.
Yeah.
So
I haven't seen it. Do you know who the director is, Jacob?
It's
Ben Wheatley.
Yeah.
I remember it coming out. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I definitely watched it. I can't remember. Did I review it for the film magazine, or did I just include it in some list article? I can't remember now, but I remember it being decent, but nowhere near kind of in the same kind of league as the Hitchcock version. I mean, that's I mean, they did some interesting stylistic flourishes in it, but a lot of time you just find yourself comparing, though it's in colour and obviously like a more modern take on it, obviously still kind of set in the period, but you just did find yourself making those comparisons unavoidably, really. But it was it was possibly the role Armie Hammer was born to play, true to life.
I can confirm that Beth Sorden did the review October 22nd, 2020 for Film Magazine. So yeah, we've got a review of that one if you want to go see it as well.
Yeah. I like Lily James. I should check it out. But I mean, there's Sam, even with your endorsement of Armie Hammer, like he's not Laurence Olivier, who is like just sublime.
Yeah, it's just one of these people.
He's playing like such a.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's playing such a I don't know, understated character who's pretty passive and hated his wife and stuff. And I guess in the book he did murder, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like a huge role you would get like maybe the best actor in the world. I don't know if he was, but when I think of his reputation, huge. And he plays this so well. And I don't think it's anything spectacular. It's just a very good job from him.
Yeah, I think it doesn't need to be spectacular, but there's so much going on with the character that you need somebody. This is going to sound slightly snobbish, and I'm not a snob. You almost need somebody with a classical training, which a lot of kind of sort of big actors now don't have the classical training. They go straight through film and like that. You need somebody with a slightly more theatrical kind of measured approach in order to do it. And that's why I think Olivier works really well, because obviously half of his time, if not 2/3 of his time, was spent on the stage doing Shakespeare adaptations,
Yeah.
And you've got so much going on with the character Maxim, kind of the depression, the wanting to be loved, trying to manage this, that, back and forth. Everything's going on, and everything has to be so incredibly subtle a lot of the time. One of the things that I will say, I'm not a massive fan of the music in this. Not a massive fan of the score. I think it gives quite a lot away too quickly. Something bad happens and you get this vroom, it's almost kind of slightly cheap sort of, the music will tell the audience what's going on rather than accentuate things. There are times when I wish it would just kind of, drop down and maybe just come in very subtly rather than the way that it does. And again, this is coming from Hitchcock. Hitchcock knew how to get his scores to do stuff. This kind of doesn't in some places. It kind of upsets me.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's some very kind of discordant strings that come in whenever Rebecca's been talked about by another character, aren't there? So it's almost like, wake up, pay attention to this bit.
Rebecca the ghost is around, and it's like, we could have got that. It could have been a little bit more unease rather than kind of, be scared. But aside from that, that's kind of rewatching it. That was one of my only big criticisms. I don't know if anyone else had any major issues apart from Jacob and the kind of pacing.
I mean, the music isn't kind of the most amazing in the world, is it? But I think a lot of these kind of fairly early Hollywood films, so I think we're a long way away from kind of film scores, which are kind of seen as like brilliant pieces of music in their own right, and like with like every character having their own theme and everything like that. I mean, that's kind of stuff that John Williams and Ennio Morricone would start to mastermind in the following decades. But
I mean, it's not that. I would just like it to be a little bit more downplayed and kind of subtle, rather than kind of telling the audience what to think on that point. Admittedly, we are only 13 years after synchronized sound comes into film, And as we know, the first years were an awful lot of trial and error. This is a very fast-moving medium at this point,
Yeah. So, speaking of sound a bit further, I think I've said it before in this because he has appeared on other films he talks about. But I could listen to George Sanders read the phone book. He's just got such an amazing, sinister, kind of voice, and kind of really helps with his character. It's kind of, he was supposed to be quite kind of unlikable and kind of just throwing a spanner in the works, basically. To the protagonist, but it's a nice turn from him, and just when he just from the moment when he just steps into their front room, literally just climbs in through the window and invites himself in, introduces himself to just cause a bit of chaos, So,
Admittedly, you're talking about people reading a phone book, not as much, but I'd completely forgotten that Nigel Bruce was in this. And it's just like, oh, hello, Dr. Watson. It's like, I don't care what he's in. For me, he's always opposite Basil Rathbone. I was expecting Sherlock Holmes walk in and start solving it at all. It's like, well, there's obviously Maxine de Winter,
Yeah, I mean, a bit like Basil Rathbone, like a fellow kind of British expat. They've both been living, working in Hollywood for years at this point. And they just. They're part of the stable of kind of actors, that the studios kind of dipped into. Oh, we need someone British and dignified, or British and bumbling, or British and sinister.
Yeah. Just drag out a few of them.
Pick your poison. Yeah.
Yeah. Rebecca is great.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Let's get to another great movie, and this one's my favorite of the three. Sam's good. Yeah, Sam's going to tell us about Rope.
By the way, very quickly, do you want to guess where I put it on my list? Rope.
I don't know.
So I put Rebecca in 7th. Rope I put in 6th.
Oh,
nice.
I love that. So fun fact: this is my mum's favourite Alfred Hitchcock film. She's always. She's always really liked this one and Rear Window, and personally, I prefer Rear Window often, but they're both great films.
Is it just the Jimmy Stewart
My mom
ones?
told me that she is scared of all Hitchcock films, and especially The Birds, and she cannot watch them.
Tell us to watch Trouble with Harry.
Yeah, you can't be scared of that, surely.
So I will tell her to watch Under Capricorn, and she'll be frightened of how bad it is.
Yeah, so Rope is the 1948 Alfred Hitchcock film, which he did between, as he was saying earlier, did between Under Capricorn, which is just after this, and The Parodying Case, which is just before this. He's already done, the likes of Notorious and Spellbound and Saboteur and obviously Rebecca, and so he was very much established in Hollywood by this point. Kind of already known as kind of like the master of suspense, and he one of those kind of above the title kind of directors who would get bums in seats. So.
I will just say, with The Parodying Case, I've had to go back to my rankings to find it in order to remember what it's about. Like, I could not have told you, like, he did The Parodying Case. I'm like, oh yeah, he did. Like, and I ranked every single one of them. Not a clue. In a nicer way, don't bother watching it unless you're going through Hitchcock's filmography or Gregory Peck's. Those are the reasons, because it's completely forgettable, as I've just demonstrated.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen about 28, 29 of his films, I think. I've still got a fair few of the 40s ones and the earlier ones kind of fill in yet. But
that's what happened.
That's one of them I've still got to catch up on.
Isn't he like John Ford, where he has like this long backlog of silent films that people just don't really watch. And they only really focus on his sound
he
stuff.
only had like 7 or 8. What did he do? So Paradise Gardens.
I mean, that's a lot.
Sorry, the Pleasure Gardens he did in 25. He did The Manxman, he did The Lodger, he did The Ring, he did Easy Virtue, Downfall, The Manxman. There's the version of Blackmail. There may be another I'm forgetting. Farmer's Wife, is it, I think? So I think there's 8 or 9 of them. But he obviously churned out in very quick fashion.
I mean, I've got no excuse. I've got no excuse not to watch them. I've got a nice box set of them. I got last year, and along with that halfway through. But yes, so Rope is essentially it's a one room kind of suspense play, kind of made to look like it's one continuous shot. I mean, it's very much not. You know, I mean, it's Hitchcock at the time admitted it was a gimmick, but essentially hides cuts between. But basically as the camera moves behind an object or a person, kind of hides a cut in there, and it's basically made up of 10 kind of extended kind of takes, but kind of stitched together to look like it's the camera doesn't explicitly cut, although there's some subtle kind of editing in there.
It works really well.
Story, yeah. And it's a story of 2 university graduates, Brandon and Philip, who murder a friend as a twisted philosophical experiment, hide his body in a chest in their living room, and then invite their friends around for a dinner party, and basically see if they can get away with it. As the people are moving around their apartment and putting their drinks and their food on the chest where the body is, and James Stewart arrives as their former housemaster from university, and he's essentially feeling like the detective character. We're meant to think he's going to get to the bottom of the of their deception, but we're meant to be on their side and want them to get away with what they've done, even though they're terrible people. Which is something that Hitchcock kind of did a few times during his career. A lot of times we do follow the perpetrators and kind of meant to feel like we shouldn't be on their side, but because we're coming at it from their perspective. We almost have sympathy for them. Kind of want them to get away with the horrible things they've done. So. Obviously, it was a massive technical exercise, for Hitchcock. I mean, he did say in interviews, that it was basically a gimmick, a marketing gimmick, and he would have just filmed it a normal way. But if he had his way, but he thought, well, if this again will something we can put in the poster, something that can intrigue audiences, then he definitely wasn't above exploiting a marketing gimmick. So apparently, because the shot length was so long, because each shot length was so long, they obviously didn't want to retake. They wanted to just keep going through, and every kind of small kind of mistake would be disastrous. Because they'd probably have to start the whole thing again the next day. So apparently, the first take, in the first scene, the camera dolly ran over and broke a cameraman's foot, so they could keep filming. He was gagged and dragged away from the sound equipment before they heard his cry of pain, basically. So the take wasn't ruined. And another instance, one of the actresses tries to put a wine glass down on the table, misses, and basically the wine glass was about to hit the floor and shatter, but a stagehand dived in, caught the glass before it hit the ground. And apparently both of these takes are still in the film, that they just about managed to prevent a cameraman screaming in pain for his foot being broken.
Tell you what,
second for a wine glass.
That's the biopic I want to see, the making of Rope. And having to do all this stuff like the live kind of thing. The antics of that would have been hilarious. I want it.
So the story is loosely based on the real murder of committed by Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb. They were 2 students living in Chicago, I think, who were in a relationship together, and they again, like the characters in the film, basically as a way to kind of prove how clever they were, to see if they'd get away with it. They kidnapped and murdered a 14-year-old boy in 1924. It's quite. If you look at the real case, it's quite distressing, kind of how they planned it out and what they actually did, and it doesn't make for pleasant reading, sadly. Their real case and the trial that followed inspired the stage play, which became Rope, and I think there was a British TV version of it before Hitchcock's film version. And apparently the British TV version, again, was like a series of long takes. It was kind of presented kind of unbroken and not very edited at all. And Hitchcock said, yes, I want to do that, but kind of on a larger scale, a more kind of cinematic scale.
So it wasn't even an original gimmick. He borrowed from British TV's version.
Kind of, and then just, but I mean that was the style of the time. Kind of early kind of British TV. It was filmed plays. It was stuff straight to camera and nothing flashy or anything like that. But you kind of said, well, if it's all going to be in one room and just this small group of characters, and we're going to follow them around, it's like, why not just present it as one shot essentially?
Yeah.
I mean, what the film's known for, obviously, apart from the kind of technical flashiness, is known for this kind of the subtext behind it. And arguably this one, I mean, it's not like Rebecca and not like Strange on Train, which, could be argued for either way. I would say this is very much, it's not even subtext really, it's there, it's in the text. These are two men in a relationship, and their friends probably know kind of what the extent of their relationship is as well, and they're just acting out kind of a really twisted kind of domestic, in kind of in full view of their friends, come around for this dinner party.
I do want to say very quickly, I mean, I don't know if this is in it because obviously it's based on real events that then got adapted that way. But I do wonder if there's a bit of the Telltale Heart in this. Right at the end of the Telltale Heart, Edgar Allan Poe story, he kind of chops up the old man, puts him under the floorboards, and then physically sits on it. And there seems a little bit of Poe in that, in terms of kind of putting essentially the casket on display and hiding it in plain sight. In order to get a thrill, get away with it, and prove how good you are, that everything's nice and fine like that.
Yeah, I mean, interesting that the sexual subtext was there from the start, because primarily through the casting, actually. So I found this interview with Arthur Laurents, who's the screenwriter who wrote a few of Hitchcock's screenplays. He was an openly gay screenwriter. But he said originally they wanted Cary Grant in the James Stewart role, which would have been interesting because Cary Grant was quite famously bisexual. He was quite open about that. He'd had many relationships with men and women, over the years. So obviously we've got the two leads in this. Who are... Sorry, I've lost them again now.
We take very extensive notes.
Farley Granger and John Dahl, who were both at least bisexuals as well. But originally in the John Dahl, I think, was he... was in it? No, sorry. So instead of Farley Granger originally, it was going to be Montgomery Clift, who again was another infamously at least bisexual, possibly just gay, actor.
Who would eventually he would eventually get into Hitchcock in I Confess in 53, 5 years later.
Yeah.
Did nobody tell Jimmy Stewart about the gay parts?
No. I don't think they basically did. No, but basically it was going to be like a cast of kind of queer actors, kind of using their experiences to kind of inform their performances in this story about kind of like repress or kind of sexuality, kind of just operates just under the surface, and it might have been a more interesting film if that's all planned out.
I saw a quote from somewhere, I can't remember which of them said, it might have been the screenwriter, who essentially just went, everybody kind of knew it was about a gay relationship and it had this queer subtext, and we just assumed everybody understood, and then the censors didn't catch it because they didn't know what they were looking for, essentially. So we managed to get it through there. So, like, everybody kind of knew, but they were the ones that didn't, and they were meant to be the ones trying to catch it.
There wasn't a word of dialogue that said the lovers were lovers or homosexual, but there wasn't there wasn't a scene between them where it wasn't clearly implied.
Yeah, at least yours came through.
John Darwin,
It'll
Farley
show
Granger,
up in the audio consistently.
Played the character's sexuality truthfully, and that took courage.
I was going to say,
I don't know whether it ever occurred to Jimmy Stewart that
when
Rupert was homosexual, but Hitch didn't say
without
anything
the dropping in and out
about it, and it wouldn't have mattered.
Oh yeah, so you record directly into the cloud, so it has your full It just
doesn't drop
uploading
in and out.
very slowly. You were at 62% uploading speed, apparently.
And now I'm at trying to reconnect. Who knows?
I don't know. It's like whenever I'm behind on your end. It's like that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Tell you what, I almost wish it kind of drops in and out for the Nolan episode. It's like, oh, time's gone wibbly.
Yeah, I agree.
Should do the whole thing backwards.
Oh, hang on. Sam's back.
Hello.
Sam, you're back. You're muted.
Somebody strangled your vocal cords. Still down.
Oh. Sam's devices not accessible. Kieran, do the seance thing.
Are you there? Give me a sign of your presence. Knock 3 times. Actually, no, Sam will get it if I say he'll knock 4 times. Nope.
No. Try closing your browser and reopening it.
Yeah, you're still talking into the nethersphere. It's like Rebecca. We know they're there, but we never hear them.
Yes. Sam's authorial presence is haunting our text.
Yes.
But not fully present.
Let's hope we do not have a death of the author.
Anyways, back to reading about Leopold and Loeb. Let's see. They were 19 and 18. They decided to kidnap and murder a younger adolescent as their perfect crime.
They're from University of Chicago. That makes sense.
Yeah.
No,
I wonder what got British television into this American 1920s murder.
Yep. Always find a way.
Sam.
Right. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Sam. Right, let's go.
It's really frustrating because I've got good stuff to get into, but I just every time I get a roll, I cut out.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay.
Okay. You talked about the potential all queer cast that didn't. Come together.
It didn't pan out. So the screenwriter basically said that there wasn't a word of dialogue that said the lovers were lovers or homosexual, but there wasn't a scene between them where it wasn't clearly implied. John Dahl and Farley Granger played Brandon and Philip's sexuality truthfully, and that took courage. I don't know whether it ever occurred to Jimmy Stewart that Rupert was also homosexual. Hitch didn't say anything, but it wouldn't have mattered if he had. Jimmy Stewart was Jimmy Stewart, which meant not a whiff of sex of any kind about him. So,
yeah.
So that's fair accurate. It would have been interesting to see what would have been different if Cary Grant, been that role instead.
Yeah. I was going to say, Jimmy
they
Stewart
wouldn't have been able to discuss Cary Grant like metatextually.
That's true. Yeah. I did find a quite lengthy essay on this from Out magazine. It talks about kind of how the gay representation, in this, kind of what it says about the characters and how it's represented. So they talk about how Brandon and Philip's special bond is apparent only to those mature enough to spot their intimacy. It's the way Dahl and Granger look at each other. And when James Stewart appears as Rupert, their college professor and possibly their former lover, the very tone of the actors' exchange reveals cosy familiarity. Doe-eyed Granger made sensitive Philip a submissive, the perfect partner to strong-jawed Dahl, whose Brandon, a dom, keeps his cohort's nervousness under control. Brandon, Philip, and Rupert take it turns as leads in Hitchcock's dance. They play hide and seek with a homosexuality in the middle of the 20th century that was still where it was still forbidden. So it's just it's very much kind of in conversation with that. That many actors, and people of the time in general, kind of were open with their sexuality, but still, it was still technically illegal to be gay at that point. So you're probably only going to be open about it with your close kind of circle of friends. The people you're most comfortable with being yourself with, and they've. Brandon and Philip here are with their closest friends, in like this social occasion. They've done something horrible, and it's so they're keeping that secret under wraps, whereas their other secret, which might be secret to a lot of society, probably isn't secret to the people in that room. So it's kind of interesting kind of standard there, an interesting kind of conversation, kind of tension between that, I'd suggest.
Yeah, and then there's the whole David aspect of it, who was also a schoolmate of theirs, hung out with Jimmy Stewart. By the way, weird we have 2 prep school housemaster episodes in a row.
Me too, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that place is ripe for male camaraderie of many types. But, yeah, I mean, David is essentially laying in a closet.
Yeah.
Now, I'm unsure of whether it's supposed to represent that he rejected them or how he's implicated in all of that, but...
Yeah, it's whether it was always the wrong place at the wrong time, or was this a kind of a way for them to kind of get their own back, whether he'd previously been involved in with one or both of them, at some point. Yeah, it could be another kind of settling of scores there, I suppose. So Out magazine again, they suggest that the gayest moment in Rope maybe when Rupert confronts the all but out Philip, saying, "I wish I could come straight out with it. What I want to know. Unfortunately, I don't know anything. I merely suspect." And that phrase is meant to, obviously, is very loaded, certain kind of situations. And it's just that Stewart's interrogation of Philip is undeniably sexual. The scene's modest gay inflection surpasses the intrigue that Neil Laboute brings to contemporary theatre, where gayness and sex are always dirty and nihilistic. So I think it's all there kind of if you're looking for it, but I think it's much more kind of explicit than something like Rebecca is, I'd suggest. But it's that kind of that tension, that kind of uncomfortable kind of comparisons, between sexuality and criminality, and kind of what considered at the time as deviant sexual behaviours with actual deviant activity of committing crime and murder. It's I think Hitchcock's using that using that quite playfully, and kind of to the film's benefit generally. We mentioned last week how kind of one of the ways to have openly gay characters in your film is to just have them as the villain. As long as they get their just desserts by the end, then you're not going to be you're not going to be too restricted by the censors. I think it's left more open ended here. Obviously, it's basically it's kind of implied that they'll be arrested soon. Because James Stewart fires some shots out of the window basically to get people's attention, and you hear sirens on the horizon. So whether they hand themselves in or whether he tells the police, the authorities, exactly what they've been doing and why they've been doing it, then it could kind of come out, and also they were in a gay relationship, so it's going to be even worse off for them when they do get down to the station. To get their day in court.
I think it's unfair that I guess the writer Patrick Hamilton of the original short story or play or whatever, he deserves credit for pitching The Purge, because Jimmy Stewart, they're all sitting around discussing the philosophy of murder, and Jimmy Stewart's like, well, we should have a purge. We need to we should be able to control the population where the superior people get to murder.
And he suggests they do it on a particular day of the week or something. If you're one of the chosen few.
Week.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's some really kind of witty, kind of cold and kind of quite cruel kind of one-liners here. One of the attendees at the party, she's a bit dull and just trying to ingratiate herself and amongst all these much more educated, kind of culturally kind of effete kind of men around her. And she says, "Do you know, when I was a little girl, I used to read quite a bit." And someone responds with, "Well, we all do strange things in our childhoods."
Yeah.
But James Stewart. Rupert from the off, he's suspicious, about being kind of invited to this gathering, and kind of he's on edge straight away, and one of the boys says, "Oh, Rupert, you're the same as ever. It's awfully good to see you again." He just responds with, "Why?" It's like, what a strange thing to say. This is I don't know why I'm here, why I've been invited. So you saying that to me is straight away has got my suspicions up. I mean, honestly, I don't know who really could stand up to a withering kind of stare from Jimmy Stewart. Because he's got just one of the great kind of accusatory kind of looks to him, and
it's almost like a pre-Kubrick stare, with the slightly kind of downturn sort of look at the corner.
Yeah, but I guess his career went on. I think he never really regarded this film particularly fondly, because he didn't think his performance was that good. He reckoned he was miscast, but as much as it would be interesting to see someone, as much as it would be interesting to see a Cary Grant in that role, I think he does a good job with it. I think, especially his dynamic, with his two former students. I think it's really, really interesting.
My thing was, I like all the pop culture discussion in this movie where they sit around talking about the movies that they like and things like that. And I was like, oh, great. So Alfred Hitchcock was also Quentin Tarantino and before Quentin Tarantino.
They're reeling off so many people that are actually in his movies. They list Montgomery Clift at some point. They list Cary Grant at some point. You're half waiting for them to list Jimmy Stewart and go, oh, wait, are we going down that route? Are we just going to go the full meta route?
Yeah, I thought. Oh yeah, I love Jimmy Stewart. He's a good actor. We love It's a Wonderful Life. Like, does that exist?
What
in
is
this
it you're
universe?
talking about? It's like, I will also say that obviously this is the first Jimmy Stewart Hitchcock collaboration. Comes back in for Rear Window Vertigo and the remake of The Man Who Does Man Who Does Too Much? Man Who Knew Too Much, if I can actually spray my worms correctly.
Too much.
The Man Who Does Too Much, the man who doth protest too much, he thinks. And I mean, as much as Jimmy Stewart says that it's not a great performance, I think it actually works, because Jimmy Stewart's either really happy or just constantly like, what's going on here? I don't really know what's happening. And so actually to be completely on guard, like right from the get-go, kind of works. I think you kind of need somebody that manages to pull off kind of a little bit sort of, not grumpy, but sort of not immediately happy and jumping around as the perfect foil for it. Because the only way these guys are going to get caught is if you have somebody that's a little bit on edge right from the get-go. The whole thing is nobody would suspect anything. You need Jimmy Stewart with this kind of suspecting eyes right from the get-go to go, I suspect something, and that's the only reason it's all going to go downhill.
Yeah.
I think Hitchcock is a master of getting his audience to look in a particular direction, exactly the point when he wants them to look, take in like key information. I just love the shot of kind of the parties going on, people milling around the room, and the chest is in the background, and you see the maid just clearing up, and kind of you just see it laboriously taking like items one by one off the chest and carrying them over, and then coming back. And every time, no one's looking at her, and every time you think she's going to look in the chest, but then he drags it on a bit longer, and then she goes away again and comes back, and then eventually people start moving back towards the chest, and at one point, Jim Stewart's going to have his hand on the chest, and it's just he's never letting us kind of forget that that's the kind of should be the focus of our attention at all times. It doesn't matter what they're saying, what's going on at the party at that point, but that's the moment of tension. He drags that out. It's beautifully done.
It is probably the best shot in the film, but you have even like smaller moments. So you've got Chandler and is it Dick that are talking as well about why they brought us all here, and then I think it's Brandon comes in and they have a bit of a row. And just between them, you see Jimmy Stewart with his 2 plates of cake watching on, exactly framed perfectly. And this is one of the reasons why Stewart apparently didn't like filming it as much, because it was such a technical exercise. He was like, Hitchcock just cares about the camera more than us. Like, we're meant to be the main thing, so he just cares about hitting his marks exactly. It's played to perfection. It's so robotic. There's no kind of life in it, but that's because he needed everything exactly where it was. Apparently, like half the set was kind of movable around, so you could get the camera in and out of various places. Obviously, the backdrops as well on a big, like almost like cyclorama, so that you could have sort of the time kind of going. So whenever you cut away or move away from the window, it's like quick, move it, get the next one in and cut back.
Yeah, because that was only like 80 minutes and seems to move in more or less real time. If you look at like the sky outside, it's actually things are moving slightly quicker outside. It's sort of like blended, isn't it? It's like the party happens quicker than it should do, considering how much time we actually see on the screen. But it's all kind of blended together, it's blurs in terms of we can kind of lose track of exactly how long they've been in that apartment for and wherever it is, and where they're moving on to, essentially.
I will say that there's a couple of things. One, I love the fact that because they're essentially massive painted backdrops, you do have little bits like the smoke coming out. You've got kind of a couple of flashing LEDs.
I believe it's fiberglass for the clouds and the smoke plumes.
Yeah,
it's like a miniature city, basically.
One of the flashing LEDs is how Hitchcock gets his cameo in. He makes his kind of silhouette with the flashing LED. Nice. And then there's also things as well. So we say it's meant to look like one shot, but a couple of times there is a direct cut. And the reason for that is the guy's going to have, because it was all on like film reels, they're going to have to change the reels over. So instead of trying to hide the moment where we change the reels over, let's just do a hard cut and not try and hide that, just to make it easier for the practical limitations of film back then.
Of course, all the other shots are just so long. It's like they almost have subliminally. You almost don't notice them at all. It's kind of, you're just so in that headspace. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that one to Jimmy Stewart is the big one.
Yeah.
And again, even with stuff like that, I think this is where Hitchcock's skill. I mean, we can praise Hitchcock always on. I know I'm a big Hitchcock fan, so I should go on about it. But knowing exactly when to cut, it's like, I've got to cut at some point. There's no this'll do. It's if I've got to cut, I will do it for practical reasons, but then I'll get the maximum impact I can physically possibly try and get out of this. And that's why I love it. It's just maximum effort on what will give the biggest impact of what I need to drag out of this when I can. And there is almost no other consideration, If there was, I know it's kind of baked into the plot of this, but if there was a choice between getting rid of kind of the queer subplot and maximising the tension, Hitchcock would have cut the queer kind of subtext of it. Because it's always the audience which is his first priority, and everything else is kind of secondary. The fact he can do both is like great, I can get both in. But I just love the fact that he decides to cut exactly when he needs to. It's like, I've got to, so we'll do it now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely top tier Hitchcock for me. I just think he just does the simple things so well, and it just makes it look so easy, considering the mammoth technical effort this must have been to actually pull off. It just works so well. It's just a straightforward like suspense kind of one room kind of chamber piece. It's brilliant.
And Hitchcock did do those well. He did this, he did Lifeboat, and he also did Dial M for Murder. Maybe another one somewhere that I'm forgetting about. But, it's very limited sets, very limited locations, and he just goes, let's drag everything out of this that we can, and he manages to, and it's great.
Nice.
Never a bad time to rewatch it.
I think something with Hitchcock movies that applies to this next movie is sometimes I'll turn one on and at first I go, I don't love this. And it just grips me and it starts going. And that's what Strangers on a Train does. So I busted out my giant print copy. I don't know if there's a small print copy of Hitchcock Truffaut. And I read the chapter opening, and like these chapters, they cover a lot. So I think I covered most of the Strangers on a Train bit, but Truffaut opens it by pointing out, so you have a disappointment with Under Capricorn, and everybody hates you, and your movie's terrible, and you suck. And then you make this movie, and you're the comeback kid. So tell me about that. And
this is the thing with Hitchcock, is that he goes in fits and starts and waves. There's no kind of generic overview. He has kind of periods and ups and downs and troughs and peaks and things like that. Have his silence, and then he does Blackmail, everyone thinks he's great, and then he has a few down again. Then he does 39 Steps and everyone's up again, and then he kind of tails off a bit. And then he's got an era in the US initially, and then Under Capricorn happens. Then he comes back in and you start to go, and then the 50s, it's still up and down because there's some stuff that's not great. And then there's going to the 60s, and you end up with Torn Curtain and Topaz and Frenzy and Family Plot, and they're kind of middling. So it's just he has this kind of, it's never even. You never know what you're getting with Hitchcock, but when he gets it on, he gets it, bang right.
You could tell Kieran's internet has restored here. It's very nice. So finally. The other thing that I thought was interesting.
And that's how mine's working, and now I've stopped speaking.
Hooray. The other thing that stood out to me from this bit, because they don't discuss the queer coding in this, the other interesting bit was Hitchcock's talking about collaborating with a screenwriter, and Truffaut goes, you're referring to Raymond Chandler. And Hitchcock says, what, right? Our association didn't work out at all. We'd sit together and I would say, why not do it this way? And he'd answer, well, if you could puzzle it out, why do you need me? What do you need me for? And the work he did was no good. And I ended up with Cindy Ormond, a woman writer who was one of Ben Hecht's assistants. So he thinks that the work Raymond Chandler did was no good, and he should hire somebody else where he can just use this cachet to basically write it the way he wants without having to write it. That's how I interpret that.
I haven't read Strange Sort of Train. I've done the first Mr. Ripley book that I did as an undergrad. So that's my Patricia Highsmith kind of knowledge. But I would have thought, actually, if you're kind of adapting something like this, especially with kind of a female writer as well, probably, I mean, I know he didn't for Rebecca, but probably getting a female writer to adapt it as well, there's going to be a similar wavelength going on there, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, or just the power dynamic that he preferred. I mean, knowing what we know, like, it's tough not to read it that way, that you replace someone with, like, writing cachet with an assistant, essentially. So
yeah. I was going to say, the trouble is Raymond Chandler by this point is Raymond Chandler, you know?
Yeah.
And if you are the hard-boiled guy and some director is giving you notes on writing, you're going to go, no.
Yeah.
It's just like, go away. So, yeah, I can see how I get a bit insulted by that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what Strangers on a Train is. It's a story about two men who meet on a train, and they walk away with very different views of the theoretical discussion that one of them brought up about planning the perfect murder.
Once again, the perfect murder returns.
Yes, the perfect murder in a Hitchcock movie is two men sitting together and describing the idea and either being in or out. So, their names are Guy and Bruno, and I mean, making his name Guy is not subtle for our discussion here, but once again, we bring back old pal Farley Granger. He is one of the characters in this. We just saw him in Rope as Philip. Here he's playing kind of a similar role, but very different. Because he's the, clean-cut, all-American good guy who just wants to divorce his wife and marry a senator's daughter and get into politics. The American dream. And Bruno is a... He's a rich sort of dandy who's just bopping around trying to find somebody to murder his dad for him. And he's played by Robert Walker. And Robert Walker tragically passed in 1951, not long after this film was released. It was not his final role. That would be My Son John. He filmed it. They actually used some B-roll from this movie in that movie. So he died, and shortly after his release, so we don't have any info from him about, what were you doing when you approached this character. But in Celluloid Closet, we do have reports from Farley Granger, who discussed that Robert Walker told Granger that he chose to play Bruno as a homosexual. So that was the intent of the performer. We already discussed, Granger himself. His character is not being played queer in any way. He is a straight guy who's basically dealing with a stalker. So we're again in the deviant mode where the queer character is doing something, socially whatever. But I think that what's interesting about Bruno is that he's such a rich, Freudian character. He's got all these parent issues. He's got issues with women with glasses. Eventually, as the course of the film goes on, he's developed all of these different neuroses and complexes, and he's just a very weird guy to begin with. And while you don't have to watch this film and read him as queer, that is what the actor was going for. It's a readable interpretation from the film, and it is such a direct idea that one of the biggest books about queerness in Hollywood was writing about it. So,
yeah.
The other thing Russo discussed is Bruno is part of a 1950s pattern for gay-coded figures where they're alien, cold, superior, dangerous, We just saw that in Rope, where the guys believe that they are superior. That's why they think it's okay for them to kill people. He is always like showing up in places where people are, wherever Guy is. He acts on like it's not really a fantasy that Guy tells him on the train, but their initial meeting is Bruno has read the newspapers. He's read everything about Guy's life. So he goes up to him and he's like, "Oh, hey, I know about your personal life. Why don't you talk to me about it? And come have lunch with me." And through all of that conversation, Bruno learns that Guy is not happy in his marriage and he's trying to get a divorce or something like that, I think is what he says. He's intending to go to his hometown and divorce his wife or something like that. And Bruno starts talking about, well, what if we do the perfect murder where each of us murders somebody for the other person? We have a motive, but because we were somewhere else with a concrete alibi, well, it couldn't have been us. And Bruno feels like that Guy has agreed to this, and so he just starts inserting himself into his life constantly to essentially get Guy to do a favor for him that, he never agreed to. But Bruno thinks that he has essentially agreed to, and because he has helped Guy out with his problem, which is murdering the wife, then he owes him one.
I think it's typical of Hitch that essentially he picks something where, yes, sort of the rest of the plot is good, but it's just such a really nice, simple initial idea of just two strangers meet on a train and one of them thinks they've agreed to swap murders. And just what happens then. Yes, I know it's Highsmith, but Hitchcock had an eye for just coming for... And I think that's where the best sort of ideas in general for any film or book is just a really simple hook that just runs. And this is a really nice setup. I mean, I'm not as much a fan of these as the other two. I think it's like 11th on my list, so still very high. But it's just a really nice, simple idea to kick it all off and keep everything going from that.
Well, I think the aspect of it that like could go either way, where like what is the film going to be? You have the way where Guy agrees and then they figure out, well, how do we actually get away with it? Or we have the version where he does not agree, and so it's a weird stalking scenario. And I really wonder how the queer aspects would read if there was consent to it, because what it essentially plays out to is Bruno running around going, "Hey, I need you to publicly acknowledge that experience that we had on a train together." And Bruno doesn't read it that way at all. And part of that stuff has to do with the production code. So this time I didn't read what the book was about. I did more Hitchcock reading instead. But there's Miriam. So she is the wife of Guy. She wears glasses. She's the one who's going to get murdered by Bruno. But she, like, there's adultery on her end. She's pregnant with somebody else's baby. She, is going through a divorce with Guy. This is 1951. And they're essentially having to, like, find ways to incorporate all of this inappropriate in film behavior and, like, how to portray it, how to make her character look and all that. And, essentially, I think the way you have to read, because the production code, the murder is like, she kind of deserved it. Because also the way that the film plays out is that old Guy and Anna, or I think that's her name, Anna, they get to live a nice life together where they are, she's the daughter of a public figure, someone of high good status that you cannot portray negatively. He's like a police officer, a priest, as a politician, and because of Guy's being the protagonist and not doing something bad and being punished, then along the way, like, everything kind of has to go in his favor inherently. So that is part of the, like, production code aspect of making this movie work in 1951. Yeah.
Do you want to get to your favorite shot that you mentioned very quickly? You mentioned with the glasses.
Which one is my favorite? Oh yeah. There's a shot in glasses of the murder, and so that's actually what I was getting to, so that works. The murder takes place at a carnival, and like that's the moment where the movie becomes like really visually interesting for me, because before this there's a lot of reverse shot, and like it's fine, but I'm like, this is just two people talking and we're cutting back and forth, like give me anything. And I get a carnival, so that's nice. Lots of cool lights. Bruno is stalking Miriam through the carnival. They like go on the Tunnel of Love ride, and there's expressionist horror shadows and screaming, and they come out, and it was just her friend playing a prank on her. But finally they get to like the fantasy island or whatever, and that is where Bruno chokes her to death, chokes the life out of her, which we all see in her glasses have fallen off her face, and we see the murder reflected in them, and it made me think of Spielberg and realize, oh, okay, no, he's also just a thief. Everybody's a thief. Hitchcock probably stole this from Griffith or somebody who stole that.
Yes, I think most directors working today, everyone borrows something from Hitchcock. It's just unavoidable.
Unless you're Tarantino, who despises Hitchcock.
Yeah. Yeah, no. That's too high art for him.
I mean, the thing with Spielberg is that he's openly said, like, two things. Well, when he was doing Duel, he essentially went, it's just Hitchcock with a truck, essentially. And his whole thing was to film it like Hitch. And then he kind of deliberately, that's how we got the kind of style in Jaws, because the shark wasn't working, and he literally asked himself, what would Hitchcock have done in order to generate a suspense? And he just went, he wouldn't show the shark. So guess what he did? Hardly showed the shark. Next time I'm
playing basketball, what would Michael Jordan do? And
I think what would Hitchcock do should be like a tattoo that you can have on your arm, just in general.
Yeah. But put in parentheses, only when it comes to crafting specifically the visual aspects of a film.
Only when it comes to crime.
Yeah, it would be an impractical tattoo. I also like this little bit. A kid runs up to him and goes, bang, bang, with like a gun. He's dressed as a cowboy. And he pops his balloon with his cigarette.
So good. There's a little bit of... With the shadows, there's a little bit of Fritz Lang in it. Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely,
God damn, he's just stealing from him. Okay.
Yeah.
Fritz Lang, it's all coming together.
And obviously, Peter Lorre was in a couple of Hitchcock movies in the 30s. So
I mean, my favourite moment from this film is, it's a classic Hitchcock moment. I think it's definitely up there with one of the best scenes he's ever done. Is Bruno fishing around for his lighter, for his incriminating evidence down the drain. It's just so beautifully done. I mean, again, like Spielberg would do something like this, wouldn't it? It's like just eking out that tension from just something so simple. It's like it's never got it, and he drops it again. It's even further away from him now, and he's trying to get it just in time.
Yeah, that intercut with the tennis match is really good. And it's cool seeing how does one of the best directors working in this time edit together a sports sequence, and like having to disguise that these actors are just mildly okay at pretending to play tennis in this moment. But something I learned from Hitchcock Truffaut, he just handed that to editors and said, figure this out. I'm not cutting this. So if you're wondering how would Hitchcock handle editing together a tennis sequence, he wouldn't.
I mean, famously, he tried to edit in camera where he could. He only shot as much footage as he actually needed. He didn't want to give him kind of the studio head or his editor that many options. Really, it's like, look, I know what I shot. I know what I need to tell a story. You just put it in the right order and emphasize, what needs to be emphasized in the scene, and then job done.
And I mean, Hitchcock is the kind of person that will have given vague instructions. Yeah. It's not just like, oh, you've got like 20,000 bits. It's not like sort of the beginning of Apocalypse Now, where, just went to Walter Murch's like, we have like, 50 hours of footage, do something with it for an intro. It would have been kind of, see if maybe you can intercut the two and see if that works. And then they'll have intercut it.
In Hitchcock Truffaut, he talks with a tone of like condescension about like, people can't put my stuff together the way that I want, so I have to shoot as little footage as possible to force them to do it right. Yeah. And like he sounds unbearable even in the best of lights. Yeah.
Was it not Del Toro, Bong Joon-ho again for Snowpiercer did something roughly the same to make sure that like the Weinsteins couldn't mess it up.
Yeah.
So they did it as much shot in camera as possible so that you didn't have any other option.
I like the party scene where, Bruno's in a tux and Guy's there and he has to pretend to not know Bruno. He's like, oh, I don't know this guy. But his girlfriend, I think her name's Anna. I keep saying that and I didn't actually check. Anne. It's Anne, not Anna. Anyway, he's like, oh, I don't know that guy. And then he's choking an old lady after discussing murder with them and he passes out. And like, he can't function in normal society because he's so just bizarre and deviant in his desires in life. And perhaps
he's very much like a coddled kind of mother's boy, isn't he? He's got a very unhealthy relationship with both his parents. His dad's obviously abusive towards him, and his mum just is kind of submits to his every whim and kind of just says to him, "Oh, he's a bit of a strange boy." He starts to get a bit carried away.
He goes too far sometimes.
Being a coddled mother's boy, this is definitely a theme which will not return in any Hitchcock film in the future.
Of course not. No.
Well, and so that's the scene where Anne goes to talk to her about her boy, and then he walks in the room and he starts trying to pin it on Guy. He's like, "Oh yeah, no, this I've been protecting him, and he killed Miriam actually." And so the Guy goes to Bruno's house. He agrees to murder his dad. He goes there, and Hitchcock talked about he didn't make this movie ironically at all, which this could have been a little funnier, I do think. But the part where he goes to the house and he's going to go murder Bruno's dad allegedly, because he wanted the tension to play out the right way and the surprise to play out the right way for this sequence, he put the dog at the top of the stairs, and the tension is Guy going to do it or not? It's, will he get past this dog to go do it? And then, the dog licks his hand. Apparently that needed to be like slowed down. And he goes into the room and Bruno pops out of the bed. His dad's not there, which he would have found out if he had held on a little bit longer. And so he gets two moments of like, there's a suspense and a surprise in there. And like that just whole thing, it's dark and shadowy. He's basically showing night with just light coming a little bit through the windows. We watch the flashlight in first person go across the like hilariously hand-drawn map of Bruno's house. Yes. But yeah, then the tennis sequence, we got the sewer grate bit, which is awesome. Then they go to the carnival finally, and this is where the movie gets like insane. This is one of the coolest old movie bits I've seen. They're at the, Bruno's waiting in line to go to the island and plant. Guy had a what do you call it, lighter that Anne had given to him, which said A to G for Anne to Guy. And it has tennis rackets on it. So he's going to go plant it where the murder happened. And while he's there, a guy recognizes him, but the police are hunting Guy. And so they think that the guy has pointed out Guy, but he's pointed out Bruno. And so they all get on the two of them, Bruno and Guy get onto the merry-go-round while the police watch. Because it's America, the policeman pulls out his gun and shoots the guy operating the carousel. And so it's spinning at just an insane rate. It's going super fast, which was shot apparently. It's projected on a screen, the actual go real fast footage, and it was shot on a miniature carousel that had been built. They put a camera inside and just filmed it. They had to get all these different angles for whenever they changed direction on the shot. And man, it's so cool. Like it's obvious how it was produced if you have the idea of like how it could be done, but it's still super cool to watch. It's a great illusion, and it's a mad fight scene.
Yeah, once again drawing on one of the Hitchcock trademarks of his many, which is final scene in kind of a big set piece kind of location. Even from Blackmail, where it's a chase through the British Museum. You think of Mount Rushmore for North by Northwest. Is it Foreign Correspondent? I think it is. The final scene is like dangling off the Statue of Liberty. He likes to do these kind of big kind of monument set pieces to end it off. And Train to the Train is one of the kind of famous ones, even though it's actually kind of the smallest almost for a lot of them.
It's small in terms of like size, but it's big spectacle of fast spinning.
Yeah. I will still say that my favourite of those kinds of ending, it's not down yet, but number 17, Hitchcock does train versus bus chase in miniatures. The movie isn't great, but that bit's fun.
Yeah.
I want to see someone like Nolan make, I liked that fight scene, and I made my actors perform on a real fast spinning out of control carousel. And we watched them like throwing up.
But it's also in a revolving kind of room as well.
Yeah.
So you want Nolan to redo the end of North by Northwest, but actually go up Mount Rushmore this time for real.
Yes. You know what?
He's
this
brought in a real
induces
Cyclops
vertigo, ironically.
Yeah. He's brought in a real Cyclops for the Odyssey, so.
During the fight, Guy saves a child because he's the good guy, and it's super corny. It's so dumb. It feels like it's there to be like production code, good guy, check. Bruno, so it finally, an old man crawls under because the police are like, no, I'm not doing that. So the old man crawls under, pulls the lever, it stops, but it like collapses while it stops, and it falls down on Bruno, and as he lays dying, it continues to insist that he does not have the lighter on him. He lies until his death because that's just the kind of person he is. And then it falls out of his hand, and the police go, well, you're exonerated, Guy. And the movie is over. And, actually, no, because Anne and Guy sit on a train, and somebody tries to talk to them, and they leave because they're not getting wrapped up in this mess again.
They're never going to talk to anyone on public transport ever again.
Nope. Being a celebrity in the 50s, very different from being a celebrity in the 2020s. Yeah. I understand some of the privacy measures that they take. Yeah. Guys, which celebrity do you think is most likely to fall for Strangers on a Train in 2026?
I'm going to pass that to Sam.
Anyway, yeah. I think it would be something like you have to be a low-level podcaster for this to end up happening to you, I think. Like a real Z tier celebrity.
Yeah, some form of kind of
I'm getting the bus from now on.
Like influencer, like a min-maxing kind of influencer of some description.
Yeah. But yeah, so the queerness kind of like it's just a queer character, really. Like it's tough to really interpret the dynamic of it to me if it's saying anything about it. It feels just more like this is a movie that has a queer character in it. For me personally watching it. And there does feel like camp to Robert Walker's performance. He is a very old looking 32, by the way.
He looks more 42.
Yeah, I thought he was. Yeah, I thought he was much older, but I want to go watch some of his other movies. I was intrigued by him. He gives a really good performance.
He's a very compelling presence, I think.
He is. Farley Granger, cool guy too. I learned that this week. So always fun to see other old Hollywood icons of a certain time that kind of just get overshadowed by all the other way bigger actors of the time. Yep.
And this is why we like going back to the old stuff to find the bits that people have missed, you know.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and I like this movie a lot more than Rebecca. If I were doing Kieran's ranking, I would swap 6 and 11 or 7 and 11, whatever it is.
7 and 11, yeah.
Yes.
But that's you being in America with a 7 and 11.
Yes. Yeah, can't stop thinking about Slurpees. We will be back next week with some other movie. I don't know what. Till then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Pod Substack. I think the latest thing on there for me is still my Masters of the Universe review, but I'm working on something for Disclosure Day and something for Toy Story 5. They're probably going to be shorter reviews, but yeah, they'll be up at some point. Not really been able to write much this week because it's been too hot in the UK and my brain's not been functioning. So,
I don't have a brain to begin with, but it's still not functioning. Hopefully you don't find me anywhere. I'm KJustmetal in various places. I will get stuff up writing at some point, but when my life calms down a bit. Boom.
Yes, and you can find me at Jacob Film Guy, enjoying the privilege of centralized air that the United States realized they needed because it was already hot here. So, hooray for me. And I don't know. Go check out the Film Magazine. There's probably a lot of Hitchcock stuff there for you to check out. So,
including my complete rankings.
Yes, including Kieran's complete rankings. You can find us at Second Cut Pod or email us at secondcutpod@gmail.com. That is it. Thank you for listening. Sorry for the technical issues, and goodbye.
goodbye.
Adios.